Hey, I'm Shabir Sultan, and I'm a music artist and a film composer. First up, we have Alex O, a film composer, producer, and pianist with 2 decades of experience. Alex is known for his versatility and has scored 24 feature films across various genres. Notable works include 1965, Taxi Taxi, and festival award winners like Fairyville. Alex's commitment to storytelling through music has earned him accolades such as the top local soundtrack award at the Compass Awards. Next, we have the multifaceted composer, producer, and the current CEO of Shabir Music Asia, Bhuvan. Bhuvan specializes in film and TV scores with an impressive track record in the music industry, particularly in Kollywood film projects and MediaCorp TV series. Bhuvan has received multiple accolades and awards as a producer, with the recent one being the Pradhanavira Awards, where he bagged the Best Soundtrack Award for the Tamil Language Festival anthem that he co-produced and composed for last year. In this episode, we will talk about the impact of film music and the untapped potential it has in discovering the Singapore sound. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Bhuvan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to talk about a topic which I think is not discussed regularly in Singapore, at least, because it's primarily about film score and how it relates to the Singapore sound. And because we don't have a very large film scene, so we don't talk about the film score much. Yeah. But I think now today all three of us are film score producers / composers, and we have an understanding about the process. And we are going to dive into the topic of the Singapore sound X film score. How does it work? Can we, are there lessons for us in the philosophy of producing a film score that we can apply when it comes to producing a Singapore sound, And of course, we have established that it can be Singapore sounds, many sounds, because when I create something, it's going to be different. Yeah. If you give me the same tools, the orchestra, the software, everything, the outcome is going to be radically different from what Alex would produce. And if Bhuvan produces on his own also, I think all of us are going to come with 3 different outcomes, and we're going to arrive at 3 different points. And I think that makes it supremely interesting, because the artist and the vision and intention of the artist would change everything, how the soundtrack unfolds.
Correct.
Of course, the film comes into play. And I chose this particular topic because I do believe that the fact that when we write for films, there's a lot of fiction involved. It's fictitious, most of the stories that we write for. Not all, but, quite a lot of it. And it comes to a point where we can imagine things. We can bring the surreal in front of the screen, or we can get it to play on the speakers. And that really got me to start thinking, what if we apply those precepts and that philosophy and that approach to create songs for Singapore, songs from Singapore, where it's instantly identifiable, or it gives you clues that, this sounds like it's something from that region. And then I thought, okay, we should talk about that, because probably that could bring more awareness to this particular subject. And there are a few things that could happen out of it. Number one is, we as film score composers, after this conversation, maybe we might start thinking more about incorporating more of our culture into the score that we're producing.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're already doing it, but sometimes we need gentle reminders, right?
Yeah.
Of who we are,
Right.
in this very noisy business of music and film. The second thing is, there could be a 14-year-old who's watching this, and they feel that I want to be a film score producer, and we are planting ideas into their psyche, if they become a film score producer, to also think about Singapore, no matter how far they go, no matter where the job takes them. Like me, I went to India, and I'm thinking about Singapore. I love India, but I'm from Singapore. So I'm thinking, what of Singapore can I bring into my score when I'm producing a film in India, Film score, is primarily about storytelling,
yes.
Right? So our job here is not to take the attention for ourselves, while this can change while in India. Okay, like how the Mongols are exceptions to a lot of things, the Indian film industry is going to be exceptions to a lot of things when it comes to films. Yeah. So, but general rule is you're supposed to support the film. It's all about the film. It's all about the story. And if we stick to that, then the most important thing is how can we bring a narrative forward through our score, through our music? Alex, what are the techniques you apply in order to tell a story better? When someone comes to you, they say that this story is about this. What do you think about as one of the first few things where, you're just trying to think about that? You're just trying to wonder, where do I start to ensure that I can tell this story well through my music?
I would actually hold back any idea that I would sometimes when people tell you stories, right, you would instantly have things going on. I'm sure all of us are kind of the same. So, but let's say when a director comes to me and then he say, I want you to score my film and this is what the film is about. So I would actually let him talk, or he or she, talk more about their film. And then from there, I would actually start asking a lot more questions. So I try my best to pause the music button in the head, because the moment I start having sounds or it would kind of sway.
Right. Does it mean that it becomes more about what you want to do and what the film requires?
Exactly.
Yeah, and
so I purposefully just pause it. Whatever that's going in my head, shut it out first, and then let the other person, or actually the one with the vision, to tell me what is it all about. And then I would actually ask, is there, and I'll ask more about their process. When you were writing the script, or when you have this idea, were you referencing another film, or what is it all about? And then from there, I will start to map, an idea. So if they do have a particular film in mind, or they actually reference a film in mind, then I'll ask them more. So we will slowly talk about the story, their process, and then we move on to music. And then from there, I will ask them, is there anything that you want it to sound like, or do you have a reference for it? Because most of the time they have. Yes, they have an idea. And at least the people that I work with, there was only one exception that they told me, you can do whatever you want. And actually, I got more scared, because it's
with that much of freedom, what do you do?
Yes, with that much of freedom, what do I do? The kind of thing. And most, I would say that 99%, if not 100%, they would already know what they want. And if you were to give them something else, and it depends on who you're working with, they may or may not be open about something that's different from what they are hearing in their head. Yeah. So I think it starts from there. And then if they do have, then I'll take a look, and then I would actually present one cue first, normally, which is supposed to be the main theme. And then I would give them what they want, and then perhaps give them something that I thought this film may be. Yeah. So, and then we'll see from there on, it starts to kind of shape the whole music process. Yeah, so that's where I come from.
But is that very much different from our process?
I really think it really depends on, there are a couple of factors that kind of determine how the process goes for me and for us, in my opinion. Because sometimes we will get the story beforehand, and we don't get the reels, or we don't get the episodes, or the film, you see. So now we have time to ideate. And the best part is when you don't see something, the canvas is blank in your mind. You don't know how it's going to look. You don't know how the character is going to be, what he's going to do. You just know the subject and the characters, probably his traits and stuff like that, you see. So then you can create a score, a piece of music, which is based off what you are interpreting when someone is telling you. But this process would then change if I now have the visual with me, because now I'm looking at things, I know how it's going to look. As odd as it sounds, maybe even the way they have colored this particular film, these things change the sonic palette, in my opinion, at least for me, when I approach film score in a sense.
Yes.
So it really depends. I have worked on both spectrums. We have worked on scores where we got the idea, we know what's going to happen in the film, but we haven't seen any sort of visuals, and we start writing. We have a main team in mind. We start building on it. We like it, and then we start building like sub teams and stuff. But also, I might get a visual, and I know like this is gonna be epic. This is meant to be royal, you know. Like if the visual is asking for this, then it would be a bit weird for me to give a very contrasting score. Not that it's wrong. It's just that maybe at that point in time I feel that no, it's not gonna work because I'm seeing what I'm seeing right now. You see, so yeah, the process really differs, but I think it's fair to say that I've dealt with both extremes in that sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess when we outline the stages, it's going to come down to similar things. There's going to be a pre-production for us for music, and there's going to be production, and there's going to be post-production. And it's a bit different from how songs are written, because we are doing both songs and score. And I know, Alex, you also have wrote songs before. For songs, it's more of pursuing an impulsive instinct that is born out of the spark of the moment, right? But for score, it's a lot more well thought out, and we have to plan it. Of course, the main theme could also come, in a Sunday morning before we're going to have breakfast, like boom, oh man, yeah, that could be it. It could start like that too.
Yeah.
It will start like that a lot of times, I think.
Yeah.
But it expands into a very elaborate process after that, because, you might have orchestras and a lot more musicians, and there's constant discussion with directors and writers and things like that. And when it comes down to the process itself for film score, it's always the pre-production, production, and post-production. In the pre-production, we are writing the score. There's this moment of danger because we don't know where it's going to go. We already got the brief. We know what the film is about, and then we're trying to find things, right?
Yeah.
And then we find things, and then we try to make them tangible, these ideas. So we start recording them, writing them, etc. And then we've got all these sketch works that we have done. And then for me, I like to... when I'm pre-producing the whole thing, I like to think about a few things. I like to think about the concept of the film itself. What's the concept? I want to think about that, keep thinking about that. The next thing that I want to think about is the emotional aspects. What are the emotions? Because at the end of the day, we're humans, and this is an emotional experience watching a film, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to make people feel something. That's also one of the primary purposes of art. So I want to think about it from an emotional perspective. What is the film trying to communicate? What are the emotions trying to communicate? The next thing that I think about is something which is a lot more intangible, which is philosophical and spiritual aspects of the film. Is it present? Because I don't want to think about these things. What if the filmmaker has gone even deeper and they've got these things present too? So I don't want to miss that out on my score. So I start thinking about that too. The philosophical and spiritual aspects of the film, which I may want to incorporate in my score. That's the third thing that I think about. And I put philosophical and spiritual together because I don't want to separate them, and because these two things can set us on a wild goose chase. We need to keep it at a particular spectrum so that it doesn't consume us. Yeah, so I talk about that in that sense. And of course, then there's aesthetics, the craft. Like, how do we want to do it? What are the tools we want to use? What are the instruments we want to use to convey the emotional, artistic, spiritual, philosophical aspects of the score? And that's when we decide, is it going to be a full-fledged orchestra? Is it going to be, native instruments, etc., etc.? Or is it going to be a synth-based score and all that? Yeah, that's craft, right?
Yeah, correct.
And this approach, I feel, is very unique to film score. Because I don't think in other genres, like when you take pop or take jazz, I don't think it works like that. I think it's a lot more reciprocal, But for us, there's a lot of thinking for us to do. There's a lot of reflection. And then we have a lot of writing to do. And of course, if we're hiring an orchestra, then that is another whole process altogether.
Yep.
And I'm coming to the point where, can this process be used to discover the Singapore sound? It's complex because now there's 1965, there is This Land Is Mine, where there is a Singapore sound there already, I believe. These are films that you have composed, and very beautiful scores. There are things that I've done and my team has done, and but it's always for something. It's for a project.
Yep.
Even if you write for NDP, you're writing for NDP, and that particular year has a theme, and you got to follow those things as a framework.
Yeah.
I'm talking about applying this process to something that does not have a particular framework or a theme. It's not for a particular year, but it's for the country itself. It's like when you write a love song for a girl, right? You don't write for the version that she was in 2022 and you give her a particular theme. All right, these are your things. I'm going to write for you. It doesn't work like that. You're just writing for this person who is constantly moving through time, ever changing.
Yeah.
But you still decide to write because you're inspired and your connection is there and your intention is dedication. Your intention is, love. What happens when we take this approach and do something like that?
I think we are still in the process of course, refining the Singapore sound. Like you said, we are multicultural and then multiracial. We are rojak, basically. So in our music, it should make sense that we have different racial instruments, they are in it, right? It's supposed, if we were to think logically, right? This would be the approach for a Singapore sound, right? Find something that's kind of symbolizes everyone, and then put those instruments in and we try to make it work. Yeah. So I think so far we have been trying to do that, and I would say that it would take some time to actually what we call sharpen or refine that sound. We are only 59 years old, right, as a country. So that's not that, long for a country. And something like culture and, the Singapore sound, I think it stems much from culture and our art, you see. And we are only 59 years old. So we still have some time to grow and finally it will take shape. So I think it will come to that. But as of now, we can only do our best to kind of mix and match different instruments together to see how it goes. I think this is what is happening at the moment. We are all just trying our best to make it sound like Singapore. But honestly, when we ask ourselves, what is the Singapore sound? I don't know. Yeah.
That's a great starting point because that's the question we're trying to ask, and I think none of us know the answer to that. Yeah. And that's the purpose of art, right? It's supposed to be explorative. We can journey through because we don't know the answer to these questions, but there are some indications of what it may be. Because what we're talking about essentially here is first and foremost sonic identity.
Yeah.
And then musical identity, and then there's artistic identity. These things are there. Yes. But you can't create these things without understanding what is the national identity. And the national identity is also shaped by the emotional, intellectual, spiritual aspects of the people who live in the country. And it's interesting to think about this in terms of imagine this whole the Black Panther film where Ludwig Göransson came up with the Wakanda theme, right?
Yep.
And it was an imagination of what it could be, but it was so real. Yeah, it doesn't exist, but when you listen to it, it's so real because no matter what, the inspiration was still countries in Africa. The African subcontinent was still the African continent was still the inspiration behind it, and the tradition, the culture, the psyche, everything was represented in that score. What if we I'm doing a thought experiment. What if we take that kind of approach and we do it for Singapore? Because you see, different people experience Singapore differently when we say Singapore. Yeah. Like someone is going to say, food. Another person is going to say the transportation, Another person is going to say the recent GST hike, Everybody's going to think about different things when we say Singapore. Yeah. And one person will just say Lee Kuan Yew and, et cetera, et cetera. And financial hub, skyscrapers, MBS, Sentosa, all of it is Singapore still. Yeah. And I guess those tangible things maybe trap us that this is what it's supposed to be. Is there a way for us to add surrealism into this whole picture? Because I could also argue that Singapore is the David in a world of Goliaths. And what about a soundtrack for David? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because we are so small, we are a little red dot. And that name came when someone, threw an insult at us, just like Daft Punk. And they say they're just a bunch of Daft Punk. And I said, damn, that's great. Let's take that name. Let's be Daft Punk from now on. So we're like, yeah, that's great. We'll take it. We're a little red dot,
Yeah.
So there is this tenacity and audacity that the nation has. Can that be represented in a soundtrack?
I think, it's funny you mentioned about Louis Grandson and the whole Black Panther universe, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, his whole process was that, okay, so he's from Sweden, and he's based in, I guess, the States.
LA.
And when he got the opportunity to work on this film, I think he wanted to do this film, but he was very upfront with the director, if I'm not mistaken, that he said that, look, you want me to do this film? I want to, but I need to go to Africa. I need to be there in Africa and I need to learn about their history, their music, and how they work. And I think rightfully he met the singer Baba Mal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
and
Baba Mal.
Yeah, and in that process, he toured with him, and he got to understand, because he was touring with these musicians, right? The Senegalese musicians. He kind of understood how this how the different instruments work, and I think primarily for Black Panther, you would have heard this the talking drum sound. And it's very interesting because right? And apparently it's an instrument you put it right below here, and the pitch changes based on how hard you squeeze it and you hit it.
Right.
So that's why and they used it initially apparently to talk amongst tribes. Okay, so can you imagine, like, he and you know what the tututu is? T'Challa.
Right.
That was what he was trying to emulate.
There are syllables in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So he and it's cool, right? Like, someone who wanted to work on a film, now he knew that the only way he could do justice to it is to go to that country and do its research, meet musicians, understand what's happening. And then the next thing is contextually, Wakanda. Sorry, I'm a bit of a Marvel buffer. Sorry.
Yeah,
Contextually,
a lot of results. It's all good.
so contextually, Wakanda wasn't colonized. So now, how do you create a score which doesn't have the European influences in it and make sure that it works in the context of the fact that it was based off the African subcontinent? So I guess that thought process itself is like, wow.
It's crazy. Yeah, that's great. I love that. I love that.
Like that, that kind of thing.
And that's what I'm talking about, about the spiritual aspect of a country.
Yeah.
Because when you're colonized, it's going to be different, psychological and spiritual aspects. But when you're not, it's going to be different. You go to Vietnam, people are very different because they know they have kicked out 2 Western powers out of their country. And it's kind of prevalent in the pride that they have, And it depends on which part of the world you are. These things change, and they're very subtle, but you can notice, if you are looking out for these things. And in Singapore, we're still in the thought experiment of producing a soundtrack for Singapore, or soundtracks for Singapore. And let's say the 3 of us collaborate, just for an example, okay? Yeah. And let's say
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool, right? Yeah. So if, let's say, we have been colonized. We've been colonized, yeah. Our mentality is post-colonialist mentality is a bit sporadic. Like it appears and then it's not there sometimes. So it really depends, Also because I think we were treated well as a colony to a certain degree. So we would see it a bit differently compared to other parts of the world. But we can't deny that it's not there. And now that we're living in this particular era where Asia is a rising power and there's more confidence in the Asian person, that's also changing. That's informing us, and all of us want to dig a little deeper into our own heritage, roots, and culture. And how would that change if we produce the Singapore sound?
Okay.
I might use your tips though in future if you want.
Okay, I approach scoring, writing for films or anything for the matter in a very sonic perspective. Like, we all have things that we lean towards too, right? Like, someone who's a pianist might start with a melody or chords. Someone who's a drummer might have a beat first. I'm someone who's driven by sound. Like I get inspired by sound. I remember once I was in Thailand and I was in 7-Eleven and the fridge was literally making a chord And that chord literally inspired me to write one of the songs that we worked on actually. So I'm heavily driven by sound. So whenever I look at Singapore, or whenever I am thinking about the soundscapes of Singapore, right, I would approach it from a very sound perspective. So I imagine myself to be a human sampler. So what I do is, just now, you were saying the Chinese taku and then a kumpang, right? So immediately when I think of something like that, the taku is like something that fills your low frequencies, and then your kumpang is something that fits the mid frequencies. So now I would think that if I'm a sampler who's sampling this, how will I make these things work? How will I amalgamate these sounds together? Like, if there's a kick and there's a snare, they have different frequency response, right? So for me, like taku is a low frequency, and then we have kumpang, which is a high frequency. Maybe we have the tawil, which is a bit more of a high frequency. So how can you amalgamate these things together
To create one sound.
and that's your drum sampler, So only in Singapore you can get these sounds quickly.
Yeah, there's a call away.
Yeah, So I would approach scoring in that aspect. I would use that as my chassis, as my foundation, and then I would start building things. Like I've always I've thought of it, I've never done it, but for me it's like, what if I used a erhu and actually write like a 4-part, 5-part like string arrangement, but using erhu. That means instead of strings, it's the erhu playing it. I've never tried it. I'm not sure if it will work, but these are possible experiments that I always want to try. And I think these are things that would give birth to a very interesting sound. For instance, we worked on I remember, I think last year, there was a POC that we worked on. And in that POC, it was an accident.
That means proof of concept for those who don't know.
Yes, proof of concept. And I was working on this particular scene, which was happening. It was a fight scene that was happening at a traffic light. Okay. And that scene literally showed the green light turning on. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was like, whenever we all cross, the green color, when the green man's up, I was like, wait, I want to try and see if I can bring that into this score. So what I did is, since it's a very rhythmic element, I sampled a traffic light, and I used that as there was like a orchestral drums going on, but that was at the back of it. It's one thing, right? Now, the next thing, which was the happy accident, was that I was like, okay, now I'm in, the scene was in CBD lah. I was like, okay, I want to try something new. I wasn't like thinking too much about it. I took a kutsum, and then I placed it on the track, and I was programming a MIDI on top of it, right? The next thing I did is, okay, I know that it's a kutsum, but I don't want anyone to know that it's a kutsum. Now, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Right? I know
that's changing the behavior of the instrument.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Then what I did is I threw in like some effects and everything. I threw in like a tremolo or a phaser. And I swear, man, it changed everything. Like it became like this like insane up sound with synths and pads. And it changed the entire sound. And I was like a lot more motivated to score. Now, even the director doesn't know that I did that thing. Like that I did that, but that was a good foundation for me to like establish a sound. And if I was a lot more conscious about this in the future, I think like experiments and processes like this could potentially give birth to the Singaporean sound.
Yeah, and as a producer, because you're in Singapore, you're thinking in this way. If I threw you in LA or Korea, that's not the first thing you're going to think about. You're going to think about other things, right? But this is in your consciousness, because you're from Singapore.
Exactly.
And I think we should take a moment to listen to that soundtrack that you produce right now, so that our audience understand what is the potential as well.
Right.
let's say, example, if we were to take a erhu and, let them play differently, like what you say, changing the behavior of the instrument. So, I mean, I totally agree with that. And I think it should be like that. What if we take the guzheng and play it differently, play a different melody, play a different scale, rather than Chinese, how does that sound like? And then I think that is pretty much, I would say, symbolizes us as well. I mean, like for me, like I said, I'm Chinese, but I don't have a Chinese name, And then when I go to China, I was living there for 4 years, from 2007 to 11, and then I can tell when I first went there, I had a culture shock. I feel that I can't connect with them. Even though I am Chinese, I'm in the land of Chinese, but I can't. So there is a barrier, and I realized, okay, so it's because of my culture. And what exactly is my culture? My culture is mixed. I'm not like what you say. I wouldn't call, hey, here's my Indian friend, here's my Chinese friend, here's my Malay friend. We don't do that. Here's my friend. Because to me, it's like I'm not Chinese, I'm not Malay, and I'm not Indian. I'm Singaporean. You see, so it's. The race thing is just, I would say, part of our culture. But I don't think we identify ourselves like that. I mean, we all, even with our dietary, I mean, we eat different foods, right?
You are definitely a little bit Indian, a little bit Malay, a little bit Chinese, because we're all like that. Yeah. We all have that mix in us.
Correct. So I think back to music, if we were to do, like, if I was to score this, right? So I would get them to play in differently, meaning I would kind of think, okay, let's have the guzheng play like how a Malay instrument would play. I mean, I would just throw out thoughts, and if I have a year to actually think and plan about it, that would be my first approach, like to change the behavior of the instruments, kind of see how, like what you say, put everything together and see how it sounds. I would probably experiment with actually scales, and melody, and let's see what happens if you fuse different scales together. I know I like to try it. If I have the time to kind of play and experiment with that, maybe something would happen, or maybe it's an epic failure.
But we gotta try.
We have to try.
Yeah. So I think that's the thing. But I would say that it will actually end up. I mean, if I do it, and then I would imagine it to be somewhat, I don't know, like a fusion of skills and fusion of instruments, and I would purposefully not make it sound like what the instrument is supposed to play, like what you are saying. Yeah, so
I love that.
Yeah, and then, but of course, we do need the anything needs rhythm, harmony, and melody. So all these three things must be there. So, and I don't know, I have to try, and then everything has to kind of work.
I love the fact that you took the approach to this imaginary assignment from the individual. That means you saw the Singaporean, and then you decided to apply that to the instrument. And the Singaporean is always a mix.
Yeah,
he or she is a rojak. There's gonna be a little bit of the Chinese in him, the Indian in him, the Malay in him, and the other in him, the Eurasian in him.
Yeah,
and this is us. This is who we are. And embracing that and allowing the instruments to also carry that characteristic. I think that's a very cool approach. And imagine marrying the sonic style and this approach of changing the behavior of the instruments. What results could we get? And if we're given 6 months with all these musicians, we come back, spend a lot of time with them day in, day out in a studio. We just experiment, sample.
Yeah, man.
I think we'll crack something crazy. I think we'll create some sort of, very exciting sonic, I don't want to use the word, but let me just use it for once, okay? Sonic revolution.
Dang.
Yeah. And I would do these similar things, and I would even push the envelope. Like when the oud player or the sitar player walks in, I'll tell him, bro, today you're playing the chongguan. You're not gonna play the sitar or the oud.
Yeah, actually, why not?
Then you'd be like, whoa, really? So you applied that technique of playing sitar
yes,
on the chongguan
yes,
or the oud, and vice versa. and I would get the, probably the person who plays the Indian mandolin, in their techniques with the little slurs. I'll get them to play, something like the oud itself, or I could get them to play the classical guitar, or I could give them a guitar with a distortion pedal and say, okay, now you play with all the, Carnatic or Indian classical slurs on the electric guitar, because that's what we are.
Yeah.
The Singaporeans, we're mixed, we got a bit of everything in us, and sometimes something
Rojak.
more. Yeah.
Rojak, yeah.
So, but of course it requires a very tactile, sensitive approach. If not, this whole thing can become cacophonous.
Yes.
And we don't want to make cacophony. We want to create music at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's where the artist comes in. Who is doing it is very important, right? Because the intention matters, right, at the end of the day. If the moment we walk in with the intention of, okay, I'm going to create something, with all the instruments, then we fail the moment we walk in with that intention. But if the intention is to tell a story, which is the intention behind every film that we've worked on so far, is to tell a story, I think we're in a safe space if we start with that intention.
Yeah.
Yeah? All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today on this episode. I think it was a very, very fruitful discussion. It got very technical. I really hope that people were able to follow us, but I'm very sure that musicians and enthusiasts and soundtrack enthusiasts would have been completely thrilled with this conversation, and they would have probably learned something. And if you've got something to share with us, please do drop it in the comment section, and we would like to hear from you as well. What are the approaches you think could work? There are plenty. I don't think we covered everything. There's so many. It's like these permutations are like colors. The more you mix, the more you get. So we only spoke like a handful today, but there's a lot more, I'm sure. So you could tell us about even your experiences of experimenting with different kinds of cultural music, and maybe your experience as a listener in what you've heard and what you've listened to. And all those things I think will be valuable for us. If anyone who is watching this show, or maybe one of us who are speaking here, want to embark on such a ambitious project, all these insights would be certainly helpful. So once again, Bhuvan and Alex, thank you very much for being part of Project Zero, a journey to discover the Singapore sound. Thank you.
There's no one back door.